put your apron on. Cooking day today in the kitchen because we're going to ranch camp next week. And so we'll be gone Tuesday through Saturday. And yesterday I got my Azure order. Cody and I wanted to stock up on a few things. And so we have sweet potatoes, mushrooms, carrots that need to be processed and canned before we leave. We're also out a lot of jerky, and we eat a lot of jerky at camp because the days are hot and it's a good protein snack to have in the middle of a hot day. And so we are going to today do canned sweet potatoes, maybe mushrooms. We're also dehydrating jerky, and I have some beef fat that I need to turn into tallow today as well. And so if I don't get to the mushrooms, I'll probably do mushrooms and carrots tomorrow. But I also need to make some bread this weekend because Lola is staying with her grandparents while we're at camp. So she only really tolerates sourdough bread well, and she likes bread a lot. And so I need to make her some. I know you like bread a lot. So I need to make her some sourdough before we leave so that she has enough for while we're gone. So right now, obviously, the kitchen is a mess. I'm gonna clean up real quick and finish that. We're gonna clean up real quick and do a little kitchen reset before we actually get started doing the canning part, because canning in a clean kitchen is a necessity for me. Well, it's not perfect, but it's at least workable now. So these are my sweet potatoes. They're actually technically yams, but we'll just call them sweet potatoes. They'll can the same. So I've got a box of these to can. But first I'm going to deal with this beef fat and render it into tallow. So I need to get my crock pot out. Tallow is really my preferred choice of fat to cook with. It has a really high smoke point, and so it's really great for like searing steaks. And last night we had pork chops, and I was able to cook my pork chops on the flat top grill with some tallow. Tallow is an animal fat. It's a saturated fat. It's shelf stable. Tallow is really a good fat for you. We fry our Thank you. If I'm frying chicken or French fries, which granted I don't fry a lot of things, but when I do fry things, thank you, baby. When I do fry things, I prefer to fry them in tallow. There you go. So I've got my beef fat here. This I got from one of my friends who owns a butcher shop. Unfortunately, one of her freezers went out not too long ago, and so she was having to get rid of some stuff. She generously gave me some of her beef fat. What's her loss really is my gain, because this is one of 7 packages probably that she gave me, and I've already been able to render, like 1.5 gallons of tallow from this. So I'm going to render the rest of this right now, and this will be the rest of it, that's all. So to render tallow, get your beef fat, get a crock pot. You can also render it on the stove top. I've never actually done it in the Instant Pot, so I don't know if you can do it in the Instant Pot. But sometimes if you get it from a butcher, they'll grind it and it'll be ground fat. If it's ground already, you can just throw it in your crock pot. If it's in chunks like this, which is most likely what you're going to come into, you will want to cut it into pieces about this big. Little cubes are kind of the best, and that just helps it more evenly break down and break down faster. We want the fat to break down pretty fast because once the extra connective tissue and stuff starts to break down, if you get it cooking in the fat, it's going to give it a pretty beefy smell and potentially flavor, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you want to use your tallow for something like skincare, tallow is an amazing natural moisturizer. So if you're going to use your tallow for something like skincare, you probably don't want it to smell or taste real beefy. You don't really want beef flavored chapstick. And so what I'm doing here is cutting the fat off, and then I'm trying to cut, so this white connective tissue, even though it's the same color as the fat, it's not fat. You'll be able to tell the difference between the actual fat and the connective tissue. You will not be able to trim all the connective tissue off, and that's fine. Hey, what's up?
I just want to stand Daddy.
Okay. And you don't have to get all of it. Just get what you can. It's not a big deal. There's going to be connective tissue running throughout the fat, and so it's close to impossible to really get all of it out. But the connective tissue is going to be those things that start cooking and turning brown after a little while, and so you want to make sure that you're kind of scooping that out as it starts to cook after the fat. So this is an example of a piece that I just will toss out. It's got some blood on it, some tissue. It's almost all connective tissue with just a little bit of fat in there, so I'm not even gonna bother with this piece. On the other hand, this piece, this is a pretty solid chunk of fat with just a little bit like this. I'm going to pull off because it's got a little bit of muscle meat on it. This I'm going to pull off because this part's mostly connective tissue. I'm going to pull those off, and I'm just going to cut this off and throw it in. I looked at tallow prices lately. They're really expensive. I think that tallow is kind of coming back into popularity, and so being able to render it yourself is a really easy skill. It's not hard. It doesn't take very much time. It's pretty hands-off. This is the most labor-intensive part of it, is just cutting the fat up. And it saves you a lot. Usually you can get beef fat itself, like this, pretty darn cheap. It's the already rendered tallow that's expensive because it's almost become like a fad item right now. And so just save yourself some money, go to the butcher, render it yourself. It's not that big of a deal. All right, this is what my crock pot looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on the low, put the lid on, and let it melt and render. This is everything that I trimmed off of it, mostly just connective tissue, some glands, a little bit of muscle meat. Obviously I didn't get all of it. There are plenty of little instances where I didn't get all of the meat and connective tissue. That's not a big deal. It won't really change anything. It'll just make our job easier to have less of it. So I'm gonna let that sit for an hour or so, and then come back and show you guys when I stir it. I got my sweet potatoes going on the stove. I'm going to let those boil whole for a little while until they warm enough that the skins start to slough off so I don't have to peel them. And it gets them nice and hot. I'm going to make an adrenal cocktail because today is going to be a long one in the kitchen. So I got a 1/4 teaspoon, probably a little bit more, of really good quality gray sea salt. It's got a lot of good minerals in it. I have this morning juice blend for my vitamin C. I'm going to do about 8 ounces of that. My really fancy measuring cups. Pure 100% coconut water, about 8 ounces of that. For my potassium. Your adrenal cocktail just needs to be potassium, vitamin C, and sodium. And I like to use really good quality sea salt because then you're getting those minerals in there as well. So I put all 3 of those in here. I'm just gonna put some ice in it, top it with water to kind of tone down the flavor and get some extra hydration. This would be a nice little pick-me-up. Sometimes if I have some June tea made on hand, which is really similar to kombucha, I'll add that as well for some probiotics, but I don't have any made right now, so it's just our plain old. Or if I'm not feeling well, I feel like I need an extra immune support, then I'll add some elderberry syrup in it. You can really do whatever you want with it. That's the good thing about an adrenal cocktail, is that there's not really a right way or a wrong way to do it. There's thousands of different variations, and it's just a nice little pick-me-up to give some love to your adrenal glands. Okay, the canner is loaded with sweet potatoes. This is a double-decker canner, so I can do 16 pints at a time. Very handy, very old. You're hungry? Okay, I'll get you some food. This is what our tallow is looking like so far. Give it a quick stir. And just stir it. Some of these on the bottom are getting a little browned. And just keep letting that melt. So we've got a little bit starting to come on the bottom. This is what you want it to look like. Stirring it so the more browned parts come on top, like this one. We'll let that go for a little longer. Sweet potatoes are coming to pressure. Sweet potatoes I'm going to cook at 10 pounds of pressure for 55 minutes because I have pints in there. Ready? Yeah. I have my sweet potatoes in the canner. I have 16 pints of sweet potatoes in there, but I still had some extra ones that I didn't want to can. So I'm just cutting them up into fry shapes to freeze for sweet potato fries. When you can or freeze sweet potatoes, you want to skin them first. So just blanch them basically for several minutes, boil them for them to, just enough for the skin to start to come off. And then you'll take something abrasive like a washcloth or something, and you can just kind of work that skin off. These potatoes have cooled off, but when you can them, you want them to be hot, so this will also save your hands so you're not handling hot sweet potatoes. But this is definitely the easiest way to peel sweet potatoes, is just boil them whole for a few minutes till the skin starts coming off, then take a washcloth and rub off the skin. Okay, I got some of the sweet potatoes done. They just came out, so they're still super hot. The lids are starting to pop down. Over here, I've got probably one more batch of sweet potatoes to go. I'm freezing them on a sheet, one layer at a time. And those aren't quite, well, they're getting close. And then putting them in this baggie so that they don't stick together. And I don't know if you heard that, but one of the lids just popped. We have I probably need to skim some of that off. So the brown parts, these brown parts, I need to start taking out like this, because if I leave that in there for very much, it's going to start affecting the flavor of the tallow, the final flavor of the tallow. So I'm going to take all those brown parts out and leave like stuff like this that still needs to melt down. We've got some jerky going on in the dehydrator. Cody just put this in, so it's still going to be a little while. We're going to take that to camp with us. And I'm going to go ahead and start dealing with these some more. Kitchen is a disaster already. Now we're going to move on to mushrooms. So I'm going to let them soak in here for about 10 minutes to knock some of any dirt loose. Mushrooms are always dirty. Always clean mushrooms really well. They're always pretty dirty. And then we're going to cut them up and can them, because I almost never have mushrooms on hand when I want mushrooms. I don't have a freeze dryer, otherwise I'd probably love to do freeze dried mushrooms. But I'm gonna keep some of these back for tonight because we're going to make I'm going to make stir fry, so I'll keep some of them back, but most of them I'm going to go ahead and wash so that I can them in half-pint jars. These are cremini mushrooms, so they almost fill up my entire bowl. A lot of mushrooms to can, but that's probably good enough for my stir fry tonight. That's probably all I need. So I'll set these aside with my hamburger. This is hamburger done by Cody and I. Hamburger that Cody raised himself, along with some deer liver pate. Anytime I cook anything with hamburger, I always, lost a mushroom. Anytime I cook anything with hamburger, I always really try to add like 3 or 4 ounces of liver pate, or just ground liver. I have liver pate on hand in my freezer that I make with the deer liver that Cody gets every year. And we only go through about 3 ounces at a time, and so it's really, really goes a long way. 1 deer liver lasts us quite a while. We usually only go through like 2 deer livers a year, probably, 3 sometimes, but I eat a lot of chicken liver, so we go through the chicken livers as well. But I just make that into a pate and keep it. That's kind of like my hack for getting some more organ meat into our diets, is just making pate and sneaking it in with anything ground. So I'm going to do ground beef stir fry. Hazel, I'm going to do ground beef stir fry tonight over rice with mushrooms and peas, and it's going to be really tasty. Okay, this I'm going to go ahead and call done. When the fat starts looking like this, there's really not a whole lot more you can get out of it, and the longer it's in there, the more it starts to get that beefy flavor. So when it starts to look like this, the bits that are left in there are starting to brown. There is definitely still a little bit of fat on there that hasn't melted, but I want to keep the flavor a little bit more pure, and so I'm just going to go ahead, take those out, put them in my scrap pile for the day, and then I will let this cool slightly. I turn off my crock pot. I'll let this cool slightly before I jar it, just so I'm not dealing with hot oil. But that's what it looks like. We will drain off all of that extra stuff when we put it through our mesh strainer. This is my mushroom water. That is why we make sure the mushrooms are cleaned very well. So, cleaned and quartered into the pot. I will simmer this for about 10 minutes and then put them in the jars. Got the mushrooms canned. So the mushrooms are sitting, the lids are starting to pop. All of the sweet potatoes sealed, so that's good. Thumbs up. Hey, don't chew on that, please. And the sweet potato fries are almost done. This is my last batch to freeze on here, and those are frozen, so I need to put them. I probably need another bag because that one's full. But we're doing good. Yay! About to start supper. So at this point, now that the tallow is pretty much cold, that's what it looks like. I'm just going to ladle it into measuring cup here, straining it all the way. So you can see it's definitely not white like lard is. Lard is very, very white when you render it. Tallow is more yellow, which is totally fine. I'm going to see if I pour it in. Some people like to filter it twice. I don't really care that much. And that is just pure tallow. So good for you. You're going to consume fat, which everyone needs fat. Good brain food. I definitely recommend tallow. That's what it'll look like. This is liquid, but it will set up once it cools completely. This is an older jar that I have, and this is kind of what it looks like after it's been set up. It'll be about the same consistency as lard at room temperature. It smells a little beefy. This one doesn't smell as beefy. This batch I did today smells pretty good. So this one I'd probably use for more skincare kind of stuff. Tallow is really great for lotion because it's pretty much the closest thing that we have to actual like human sebum, which is the natural oils that our skin produces. And so that using tallow for skincare is really, really good for you. Keeps you nice and moisturized. So just a little bit of a smaller batch today. And since I did this older jar not too long ago, probably a couple weeks ago, I'm just going to add this. It's about a cup to the top of that, and it'll be fine. There you go. Tallow. It's been a long day in the kitchen. The girls are in bed, and so I'm just trying to put everything up, clean up a little bit, because in the morning we have about 50 pounds of carrots to can as well. So I'm not going to put my canners back up on top or anything. The dehydrator's still going. I actually need to feed my sourdough starter because I need to do bread tomorrow as well. Sometimes it seems like it never ends, but preservation is probably one of my favorite parts of this lifestyle and homesteading. Being able to make something that's shelf stable that my family can just grab whenever they need to, something that I always have on hand, you know, thinking about what the future meals might be and that we're prepared no matter what the grocery store shelves look like or what the prices look like or anything. You know, this will last my family and it will feed them and nourish them. I know exactly what goes into it. And so as tiresome as it is, like my feet are sore from such a big kitchen day and taking care of the girls at the same time. I know it doesn't look like much, but it is a lot of work that goes into food preservation. But I sit down at the end of the day really, really satisfied at all of the work that we get to do. I'm really thankful that we've been blessed with being able to preserve so much of our own food. Really thankful for it. If you like this video, please support us, subscribe to the channel. We put out a new video about homesteading, ranching, etc. every single Thursday. And thanks again for taking time to watch.